Welcome, weary wanderer, to the enigmatic town of Gravity Falls, Oregon, where the impossible becomes mundane and mysteries lurk behind every pine tree. Tonight, we'll explore the deepest secrets that remain hidden in this supernatural haven, from ancient symbols carved in forgotten caves to cosmic entities that defy explanation. This is a journey through questions without answers, riddles wrapped in enigmas, and the beautiful uncertainty that makes this small town the strangest place on Earth. So settle in, let the mysteries wash over you like morning mist through the forest, and let's venture together into the unknown. In the depths of Stanford Pine's journals, scattered throughout the margins of his most careful observations, and hidden within the coded passages of his most sensitive discoveries, there exist symbols and ciphers that have never yielded their secrets to even the most dedicated cryptographers. These encrypted mysteries represent perhaps the most tantalizing aspects of Gravity Falls' supernatural legacy. Messages that seem to hover just beyond the edge of comprehension like shadows at the periphery of vision. The journals themselves are masterworks of scholarly documentation, filled with meticulous drawings and careful observations that reveal the scientific mind's attempt to catalogue the impossible. Yet between the lines of Ford's careful script, in the spaces where his pen hesitated and his certainty wavered, we find evidence of discoveries so profound that they could only be recorded in the most secure ciphers his brilliant mind could devise. Some of these encoded messages were later deciphered by the combined efforts of Dipper, Mabel, and the other inhabitants of the Mystery Shack, their solutions revealing everything from hidden treasure locations to warnings about dimensional instability. But others remain as mysterious today as they were when Ford first committed them to paper, their meanings locked away behind mathematical principles that may transcend conventional understanding of cryptography itself. The Caesar ciphers that Dipper learned to decode were merely the surface layer of Ford's encoding system, simple substitutions designed to deter casual observation, while leaving the truly sensitive information protected by far more sophisticated methods. These deeper encryptions appear to follow principles that draw not only from conventional mathematics, but from the otherworldly geometries that Ford encountered during his interdimensional travels. Consider the recurring appearance of certain geometric patterns throughout the journals, symbols that seem to shift subtly depending on the angle from which they're viewed or the time of day when they're observed. These patterns appear most frequently in the margins of Ford's entries about Bill Cipher, as if the mere act of writing about the dream demon caused reality to bleed into the pages themselves. The triangular motifs that appear throughout Ford's work extend far beyond simple representations of Bill's iconic form. They seem to follow a mathematical progression that relates to concepts in non-Euclidean geometry, suggesting that Ford discovered principles of dimensional mathematics that allowed him to encode information in ways that exist partially outside normal space-time. These encoded triangles appear to pulse with their own internal logic, their angles and proportions following ratios that correspond to no known mathematical constants, yet somehow feel fundamentally correct to those who study them long enough. Even more mysterious are the backward messages that appear throughout various episodes of Gravity Falls, audio tracks that when reversed reveal cryptic phrases and warnings that seem to emanate from sources beyond the show's normal narrative structure. Some of these reversed messages have been decoded by fans, revealing everything from playful creator commentary to genuine plot hints that foreshadowed major story developments. But the most intriguing backward messages remain those that seem to come from voices not associated with any character in the show, recordings that suggest the presence of entities or forces that exist in the spaces between the story's official canon. These phantom voices speak in languages that sound almost familiar, yet remain tantalizingly incomprehensible, as if they're communicating in tongues that predate human language, or originate from dimensions where sound itself follows different physical laws. The cipher wheels that appear throughout the series present another layer of cryptographic mystery, mechanical devices that seem simple in their construction, yet operate according to principles that extend beyond mere letter substitution. The wheel found in Journal 3, with its intricate system of rotating discs and alignment markers, appears to be based on a mathematical system that incorporates elements of both ancient numerology and advanced quantum mechanics. When properly aligned, these cipher wheels don't simply decode messages, they seem to reveal information that wasn't originally encoded in the source material, as if the act of decryption itself opens windows into parallel realities where different versions of the same events unfolded. Users of these devices report experiencing moments of clarity about Gravity Falls' mysteries that feel less like solved puzzles and more like memories of experiences they never actually had. The most sophisticated of these cipher wheels appear to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. Their surface layer revealing conventional coded messages, while deeper alignments unlock information that seems to exist in a quantum superposition of multiple possible meanings. These quantum ciphers, as some researchers have dubbed them, suggest that Ford's cryptographic work had evolved beyond simple information security and into realms of dimensional communication that allowed him to send messages not just across space, but across the boundaries between possible worlds. Perhaps most mysterious of all are the cipher patterns that appear to generate themselves, encoded messages that emerge spontaneously in documents and recordings long after their original creation. Security cameras at the Mystery Shack have captured footage of journal pages displaying new symbols that weren't present when the pages were first photographed, while audio recordings of conversations in the shack sometimes develop backward messages that weren't detectable when the conversations originally took place. These self-generating ciphers seem to follow the town's supernatural rhythms, appearing most frequently during periods of high paranormal activity and displaying patterns that correspond to astronomical events and dimensional fluctuations. They suggest that the act of encryption in Gravity Falls has become a living process, one that continues to evolve and develop new layers of meaning as the town's supernatural ecosystem adapts to changing cosmic conditions. The connection between these encoded mysteries and Bill Cipher's influence cannot be ignored, though the relationship appears more complex than simple demonic interference. Many of the most sophisticated cipher patterns display mathematical elegance that suggests they were created by a mind that genuinely understood and appreciated the beauty of pure mathematics, while Bill's typical manipulations tend toward chaos and paradox rather than elegant complexity. This has led some researchers to theorize that the most advanced cipher systems in Ford's journals may have been collaborative efforts, products of a brief period when Ford and Bill worked together before the Dream Demon's true nature became apparent. These collaborative ciphers would represent a fusion of human mathematical intuition with hyperdimensional geometric principles, creating encryption methods that exist at the intersection of multiple realities. The geometric progressions that appear throughout these collaborative ciphers follow patterns that seem designed to teach as well as conceal, as if Ford was using the encryption process itself as a way of documenting his growing understanding of dimensional mathematics. Each solved layer of these ciphers reveals not just hidden information but also insights into mathematical principles that don't exist in conventional human understanding, making the decryption process itself a form of interdimensional education. Background details in various episodes contain their own cryptographic mysteries, hidden messages that appear in seemingly random locations throughout the town of Gravity Falls. Graffiti on walls sometimes displays symbols that correspond to no known alphabet, while signs and advertisements occasionally feature text that can only be read when viewed through specific filters or from particular angles. These environmental ciphers suggest that the entire town of Gravity Falls functions as a massive, cryptographic device, with every street corner and building facade potentially containing encoded information for those who know how to look for it. The messages hidden in these locations range from simple character names and episode hints to complex warnings about supernatural phenomena and instructions for dealing with paranormal emergencies. The most intriguing of these environmental ciphers are those that seem to respond to the observer's presence, displaying different messages depending on who is looking at them and when. Children often report seeing different symbols than adults, while individuals with high supernatural sensitivity sometimes observe messages that remain completely invisible to others. This adaptive quality of the environmental ciphers suggests that Gravity Falls itself may be alive in some sense, actively choosing what information to reveal to which observers, based on criteria that extend beyond conventional understanding. The town appears to be conducting its own ongoing cryptographic conversation with its inhabitants, offering different pieces of its vast puzzle to different people in a coordinated effort to gradually reveal its deepest secrets. The implications of these encrypted mysteries extend far beyond simple puzzle-solving entertainment. They suggest that Gravity Falls operates according to informational principles that exist at the fundamental level of reality itself, where consciousness and mathematics intersect to create meaning that transcends conventional understanding of both encryption and communication. In the quiet moments between decryption attempts, when the symbols seem to hover on the edge of revelation, before retreating back into mystery, we glimpse the true nature of Gravity Falls as a place where knowledge itself follows different rules. Here, information exists not as static data to be decoded, but as living entities that choose their own moments of revelation, creating an ongoing dialogue between the mysteries of the town and the consciousness of those who seek to understand them. These encrypted mysteries remind us that some secrets are meant to unfold gradually, revealing themselves only when the seeker has developed the wisdom and understanding necessary to handle their implications. In Gravity Falls, the journey of decryption is itself part of the message, a process that changes the decoder as much as it reveals the encoded information. Beyond the familiar boundaries of our own reality, where the laws of physics bend and twist like branches in an interdimensional wind, lies the vast expanse of the multiverse that Stanford Pines discovered during his 30-year exile from our world. This infinite tapestry of parallel realities represents perhaps the greatest mystery in all of Gravity Falls' supernatural catalogue, a cosmic puzzle so vast and complex that even Ford's brilliant mind could only map the tiniest fraction of its endless possibilities. The portal that tore open beneath the Mystery Shack was not merely a doorway between two specific locations, but a wound in the fabric of existence itself, a rift that connected our dimension to the swirling chaos of the interdimensional void where countless realities intersect and merge. Through this tear in space-time, Ford glimpsed worlds beyond imagination, each one a variation on familiar themes, yet twisted by the butterfly effect of infinite possibility into forms that defy conventional understanding. In some of these parallel dimensions, Gravity Falls exists as a thriving metropolis where the supernatural has been fully integrated into daily life, its streets bustling with creatures that in our reality hide in the deepest forests. The residents of these urban gravity falls have developed technologies that harness paranormal energy for everything from transportation to communication. Their society built on the premise that magic and science are merely different expressions of the same fundamental forces. Other dimensions contain versions of Gravity Falls where the town never existed at all, where the confluence of supernatural energies that creates the anomalous zone we know instead manifests as vast crystalline formations that stretch toward alien skies. These crystal dimensions pulse with their own internal light, their geometric structures following mathematical principles that exist only in realities where the constants of physics have been adjusted by cosmic forces beyond mortal comprehension. Ford's journal entries from his interdimensional travels contain tantalizing references to versions of gravity falls where time flows backward, where effect precedes cause, and the residents live their lives in reverse sequence, while remaining perfectly adapted to their inverted temporal environment. These backward dimensions raise profound questions about the nature of causality itself and whether consciousness can exist independently of linear time progression. The most disturbing of Ford's dimensional observations concern realities where gravity falls exists but has been fundamentally altered by the complete victory of malevolent forces. In these shadow dimensions, Bill Cipher or entities like him have succeeded in their plans for reality, transforming the familiar landmarks of the town into monuments to chaos and suffering that serve as stark warnings about the consequences of supernatural forces left unchecked. Yet, equally mysterious are the dimensions where benevolent forces have achieved similar total victory, creating versions of gravity falls that exist in states of perfect harmony and understanding. These paradise dimensions seem almost too good to be true, their residents living in peaceful coexistence with supernatural forces that have been completely tamed and domesticated, raising questions about whether such perfection comes with costs that are not immediately apparent. The mechanics of dimensional travel remain largely unexplained, despite Ford's extensive research and direct experience. His portal device seemed to operate on principles that combined advanced quantum mechanics with supernatural energy manipulation, creating controlled rifts in space-time that could be precisely targeted to specific dimensional coordinates. Yet the deeper Ford delved into these principles, the more he realized that dimensional travel was not merely a technological achievement, but a form of cosmic communication with forces that exist outside normal space-time. The interdimensional beings that Ford encountered during his travels represent perhaps the most significant mystery in his entire catalogue of supernatural research. These entities exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions, their consciousness spanning realities in ways that make conventional understanding of individual identity seem primitive and limited. Some appear to be benevolent guides who help travelers navigate the dangerous currents of the interdimensional void, while others seem to be predators that feed on the confusion and disorientation that dimensional travel inevitably produces. The nightmare realm that serves as Bill Cipher's domain exists in a state of constant flux between dimensions, its boundaries shifting and overlapping with countless other realities in patterns that follow no discernible logic. This realm appears to serve as a kind of interdimensional crossroads where beings from different realities can interact, though the chaotic nature of its existence makes such interactions unpredictable and often dangerous. Ford's observations suggest that the nightmare realm may not be Bill's creation, but rather a naturally occurring phenomenon in the interdimensional void, a place where the normal rules of reality break down so completely that consciousness itself becomes malleable and subject to external manipulation. This would explain Bill's power within the realm, while also suggesting that there may be other entities with similar capabilities operating in different sectors of the interdimensional landscape. The question of how many versions of familiar characters exist across the multiverse remains one of the most haunting mysteries in Ford's research. His journal contains references to encounters with alternate versions of himself, some who made different choices at crucial moments in their lives, and others who lived in realities where the fundamental nature of existence itself follows different rules. These alternate Fords range from versions who never discovered Gravity Falls' supernatural secrets and lived ordinary academic lives, to versions who became gods of their respective realities through mastery of interdimensional forces. The implications of meeting these other selves had profound psychological effects on Ford, forcing him to confront the arbitrary nature of identity and the countless paths his life might have taken under different circumstances. Even more disturbing are Ford's references to dimensions where versions of Dipper and Mabel exist but with fundamentally different personalities and relationships. In some realities, the twins are bitter enemies whose conflicts have torn their families apart, while in others they never met at all due to different family circumstances or timelines, where their parents made different choices about their children's summer plans. The existence of these alternate versions of beloved characters raises troubling questions about the nature of personality and whether the traits we consider fundamental to individual identity are actually contingent on specific environmental and historical circumstances. If infinite versions of ourselves exist across the multiverse, which one represents our true self? And what happens to our sense of individual uniqueness when confronted with the reality of infinite variation? Ford's research into dimensional bleeding suggests that the boundaries between parallel realities are not as solid as they might appear, with elements from different dimensions occasionally leaking through into adjacent realities in ways that can fundamentally alter their nature. These bleeding events seem to occur most frequently in locations where the fabric of space-time has been weakened by supernatural activity, making Gravity Falls itself a natural focal point for interdimensional instability. The effects of dimensional bleeding range from subtle alterations in local physics to complete replacement of familiar landmarks with their equivalents from parallel realities. Residents of affected areas often experience memories of events that never occurred in their timeline, while familiar objects sometimes display properties that suggest they originated in dimensions where different natural laws apply. The most significant dimensional bleeding event in Gravity Falls' recorded history was Weirdmageddon itself, when Bill Cipher's manipulation of reality allowed elements from the nightmare realm to pour into our dimension on a massive scale. The long-term effects of this event remain largely unexplored, with subtle changes in the town's supernatural ecosystem continuing to manifest years after Bill's defeat. Ford's notes suggest that Weirdmageddon may have permanently altered the dimensional boundaries around Gravity Falls, making future bleeding events more likely and potentially more severe. The town may now exist in a state of partial overlap with multiple other realities, its residents unknowingly sharing their space with echoes and reflections from parallel worlds that exist just beyond the edge of perception. Time travel represents another aspect of interdimensional mystery that Ford's research could never fully explain. His encounters with time-displaced versions of events and people suggest that temporal manipulation may actually be a form of dimensional travel, with different time periods existing as separate realities that can be accessed through appropriate techniques and technologies. The time travel adventures that Dipper and Mabel experienced during their summer in Gravity Falls created paradoxes that should have torn apart the fabric of causality. Yet reality somehow adapted to accommodate these contradictions in ways that preserve the integrity of the timeline. This suggests that time itself may possess a form of consciousness or self-repair mechanism that operates according to principles beyond current scientific understanding. The implications of time travel extend far beyond simple cause and effect, raising questions about free will and determinism that have puzzled philosophers for centuries. If multiple timelines exist simultaneously and can be accessed through dimensional travel, does this mean that all possible choices and outcomes are equally real, or does some mechanism exist to privilege certain timelines over others? Ford's research notes contain references to temporal surveillance systems that seem to monitor changes in the timeline and make adjustments to prevent paradoxes from causing reality-breaking contradictions. These systems appear to operate automatically, suggesting that the universe itself has evolved mechanisms for maintaining temporal stability in the face of conscious attempts to alter history. The existence of prophecies and predictions that prove accurate, despite their subjects' knowledge of them, suggests that certain aspects of the future may be fixed regardless of dimensional variation. These prophetic constants seem to exist as anchor points in the timeline, events that must occur regardless of the specific circumstances that lead to them or the dimensional context in which they unfold. Bill Cipher's own existence as an interdimensional entity raises questions about consciousness and identity that extend far beyond individual psychology. As a being that exists simultaneously across multiple dimensions, Bill's sense of self presumably encompasses experiences and memories from countless different realities, making his motivations and goals difficult to understand from the perspective of beings limited to single-dimensional existence. The dream realm that Bill inhabits represents another layer of interdimensional mystery, a space that seems to exist at the intersection of consciousness and reality, where thoughts and imagination can take physical form. Ford's research suggests that dreams may actually be glimpses into parallel dimensions where the dreamer's subconscious desires and fears have become manifest reality, making sleep itself a form of involuntary dimensional travel. The connection between dreams and dimensional travel explains many of the strange experiences reported by Gravity Falls residents, from prophetic nightmares that accurately predict future events to shared dreams that suggest multiple consciousness can access the same dream dimensions simultaneously. These phenomena indicate that the boundary between individual minds may be much more permeable than conventional psychology assumes. Ford's journal contains references to dream dimensions where entire civilizations exist solely within the sleeping minds of interdimensional entities, their reality completely dependent on the continued dreaming of beings so vast that their thoughts span galaxies. These nested realities raise profound questions about the nature of existence itself and whether our own reality might be merely the dream of some unimaginably large consciousness. The portal technology that Ford developed represents humanity's first successful attempt to create controlled access to the interdimensional void, yet his research notes suggest that naturally occurring portals have existed throughout history, in locations where supernatural forces have weakened the barriers between realities. These natural portals explain many of the historical accounts of supernatural phenomena that predate modern scientific understanding. Ancient petroglyphs and cave paintings throughout the Gravity Falls area contain symbols that appear to be maps of interdimensional space, suggesting that indigenous peoples discovered methods of dimensional travel long before European colonization brought scientific approaches to supernatural phenomena. These ancient maps follow cartographic principles that don't correspond to any known system of navigation, yet they display remarkable consistency across different archaeological sites. The question of whether dimensional travel is ultimately beneficial or dangerous for human consciousness remains unresolved despite Ford's extensive personal experience. His 30 years in the interdimensional void clearly expanded his understanding of reality's true nature, yet they also exposed him to traumas and revelations that fundamentally altered his psychological makeup in ways that may never fully heal. The psychological effects of dimensional travel seem to compound over time, with extended exposure to parallel realities creating a form of existential vertigo that can make it difficult to maintain a coherent sense of personal identity. Ford's journal entries from his later travels show increasing signs of dissociation and uncertainty about which memories belong to his original timeline and which were acquired during interdimensional experiences. Perhaps the most profound mystery surrounding interdimensional travel concerns the question of whether infinite realities actually exist, or whether consciousness itself creates new realities through the act of observation. Ford's research suggests that the process of dimensional travel may actually be a form of reality creation, with travelers bringing new realities into existence through their expectations and beliefs about what they will find. This possibility transforms dimensional travel from exploration into creation, making every interdimensional journey an act of cosmic artistry that adds new chapters to the infinite book of existence. If true, this means that Ford's 30 years of dimensional travel may have literally expanded the multiverse, creating new realities that would never have existed without his conscious observation of their possibility. The ethical implications of such creative dimensional travel are staggering, as they would make every interdimensional traveler responsible not just for their own actions, but for the entire realities that their consciousness brings into being. This responsibility extends to all the conscious beings that inhabit these created realities, making dimensional travel perhaps the most consequential activity in which any conscious entity can engage. As we contemplate these interdimensional enigmas, we find ourselves confronting mysteries that exist at the very foundation of existence itself, questions that challenge our most basic assumptions about reality, consciousness, and identity. In the infinite expanse of the multiverse, where every possibility becomes reality and every thought creates new worlds, the true mystery may not be what lies beyond our dimension, but what lies within our own consciousness that gives us the power to imagine and therefore create these infinite possibilities. In the misted valleys and ancient forests of what would eventually become Gravity Falls, Oregon, there existed civilizations whose understanding of the supernatural far exceeded that of any European explorer who would later claim these lands as their discovery. These indigenous peoples, whose tribal name has been lost to the deliberate erasure of colonial history, possessed knowledge of the area's otherworldly properties that stretched back through oral traditions spanning countless generations. Their wisdom encoded in ceremonies and stories that treated the paranormal not as anomaly but as fundamental truth. The petroglyphs that still mark the hidden caves and cliffsides throughout the Gravity Falls region tell stories that predate written history, their symbols carved into living rock by hands that understood the deeper currents of supernatural energy flowing through this particular confluence of earth and sky. These ancient markings display a sophisticated understanding of dimensional mathematics and cosmic geometry that rivals anything found in Stanford Pine's journals, suggesting that the indigenous inhabitants had developed their own systematic approach to cataloging and interacting with the area's anomalous phenomena. The symbols themselves follow patterns that seem to shift and change depending on the time of day, the phase of the moon, and the seasonal cycles that govern the natural world around them. What appears to be a simple representation of a bear during daylight hours might transform under starlight into complex geometric figures that map the locations of dimensional weak points throughout the forest. These metamorphic petroglyphs suggest that their creators understood the fundamental connection between consciousness, observation, and the manifestation of supernatural phenomena. Archaeological evidence scattered throughout the region indicates that the indigenous peoples developed technologies and practices specifically designed to work in harmony with Gravity Falls' unique supernatural ecosystem. Stone circles and earthen mounds found in remote forest clearings appear to be constructed according to principles that channel and focus paranormal energy, creating safe zones where normal natural laws could be temporarily restored when dealing with supernatural forces became too dangerous or unpredictable. These ancient structures display an architectural sophistication that modern archaeology struggles to explain, with precisely cut stones fitted together without mortar in configurations that remain stable despite centuries of earthquake activity and weather erosion. The mathematical precision of their construction suggests access to engineering knowledge that conventional theories about pre-Columbian technology cannot adequately account for, particularly given the absence of metal tools or mechanical equipment that such precision would seemingly require. The most mysterious of these ancient constructions are the underground chambers that have been discovered buried beneath decades of forest growth. Their walls, covered in murals that depict interactions between human figures and creatures that bear striking resemblances to the supernatural entities documented in more recent times. These subterranean galleries seem to have served as both archives and sanctuaries, places where knowledge of the supernatural could be preserved and transmitted, while providing protection from the very forces they documented. The pigments used in these underground murals display properties that conventional chemistry cannot fully explain, remaining vivid and unfaded despite centuries of exposure to moisture and natural decay processes. Analysis of these pigments reveals mineral compositions that don't match any known deposits in the region, suggesting either advanced trade networks that brought exotic materials from distant locations or alchemical processes that could transform local materials into substances with enhanced durability and luminescence. The oral traditions that survived the disruption of colonization speak of ceremonies and rituals that were performed at specific times and locations to maintain the balance between the human world and the supernatural forces that surrounded it. These traditions describe elaborate seasonal festivals where entire communities would gather to perform synchronized activities designed to honor and appease the otherworldly entities that shared their territory, creating temporary truces that allowed normal life to proceed during the most dangerous periods of supernatural activity. The ritual knowledge preserved in these oral traditions demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of supernatural behavioral patterns and seasonal variations that modern researchers are only beginning to appreciate. The indigenous peoples had apparently mapped out yearly cycles of paranormal activity with remarkable precision, identifying specific dates and lunar phases when certain types of supernatural encounters were most likely to occur, and developing appropriate ceremonial responses for each category of otherworldly manifestation. Perhaps most significantly, these oral traditions contain detailed descriptions of communication protocols for interacting with supernatural entities, elaborate systems of gesture, sound, and symbolic offering that were believed to establish peaceful contact with beings whose motivations and capabilities far exceeded human understanding. These protocols suggest that the indigenous inhabitants had developed something approaching diplomatic relations with at least some of the area's supernatural residents, creating frameworks for coexistence that prevented the kind of destructive conflicts that often characterize more recent encounters. The herbal knowledge preserved in these traditions includes extensive catalogues of plants and fungi that were used for protection against supernatural influences, healing from otherworldly encounters, and enhancement of human perception to better detect and understand paranormal phenomena. Many of these botanical remedies utilize species that are now extinct or extremely rare, their disappearance possibly linked to the disruption of traditional harvesting and cultivation practices that maintained the delicate ecological balances necessary for their survival. Archaeological excavations in areas identified by oral tradition as sacred sites have revealed caches of carved artifacts whose purposes remain mysterious to modern researchers. These objects, crafted from materials ranging from local stones to substances that don't match any known geological formations, display intricate patterns and symbols that seem to serve functions beyond mere decoration or artistic expression. Their placement within the archaeological sites suggests ritual significance, yet their specific uses in ceremonial contexts remain entirely speculative. The most intriguing of these artifacts are the crystal formations that appear to have been deliberately shaped and positioned according to principles that combine aesthetic beauty with functional geometry. These crystals display optical properties that create complex light patterns when illuminated by fire or sunlight, their internal structures designed to generate specific visual effects that may have been used for meditation, communication with supernatural entities, or navigation through altered states of consciousness during ceremonial activities. Linguistic analysis of the surviving oral traditions reveals vocabulary and grammatical structures that seem specifically adapted for describing supernatural phenomena and interdimensional experiences. The indigenous language contained precise terms for different types of otherworldly encounters, various categories of supernatural entities, and subtle gradations of paranormal activity that English lacks adequate words to express. This linguistic sophistication suggests a cultural framework that was fundamentally oriented around supernatural experience rather than treating it as exceptional or extraordinary. The ceremonial sites identified through oral tradition and archaeological investigation display alignments with astronomical phenomena that extend far beyond simple solar and lunar observations. These ancient structures seem to track the movements of specific stars and planets, whose positions correlate with increased supernatural activity, creating calendars that integrated astronomical cycles with paranormal phenomena in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand. The precision of these astronomical alignments rivals that of more famous ancient observatories like Stonehenge or Chichen Itza, yet they were created by peoples who supposedly lacked the mathematical and engineering knowledge necessary for such sophisticated construction. This apparent contradiction suggests either that conventional archaeological theories about pre-Columbian capabilities are fundamentally flawed, or that the indigenous inhabitants had access to knowledge sources that extended beyond normal human learning processes. The most mysterious aspect of these ancient observatories is their apparent ability to predict supernatural events with remarkable accuracy, their alignments corresponding not just to celestial movements, but to patterns of paranormal activity that follow cycles spanning decades or even centuries. This predictive capability suggests a level of understanding about the relationship between cosmic forces and supernatural phenomena that modern science has yet to achieve, despite access to advanced technology and detailed historical records. The sacred geography described in oral traditions maps out networks of power sites throughout the region, connected by invisible currents of supernatural energy that flow like rivers beneath the surface of normal reality. These energy networks apparently served as navigation aids for ceremonial journeys and spiritual quests, allowing initiated individuals to travel safely through areas where supernatural activity made normal movement extremely dangerous. The traditional knowledge of these energy networks included detailed understanding of how supernatural forces ebbed and flowed according to natural cycles, creating windows of opportunity when dangerous areas could be safely traversed, and periods when even the most experienced spiritual practitioners needed to seek shelter from otherworldly storms. This cyclical understanding of supernatural phenomena demonstrates a sophisticated appreciation for the dynamic nature of paranormal activity that modern researchers often overlook in their search for consistent, repeatable patterns. The most profound mystery surrounding these ancient energy networks concerns the question of how pre-technological peoples could detect and map forces that modern scientific instruments can barely register. The traditional knowledge suggests access to enhanced perceptual abilities that allow direct sensory experience of supernatural phenomena, possibly developed through ceremonial practices that modified human consciousness in ways that expanded sensory capabilities beyond their normal limitations. The spiritual practices described in oral traditions include techniques for entering altered states of consciousness that apparently provided access to information about supernatural entities and phenomena that could not be obtained through normal sensory experience. These practices involved combinations of meditation, ritual movement, herbal preparations, and exposure to specific acoustic and visual environments that were believed to thin the barriers between ordinary awareness and supernatural perception. The locations where these spiritual practices were performed display acoustic properties that modern acoustics cannot fully explain, with natural rock formations creating resonance effects that amplify and modify sound in ways that seem designed to induce specific psychological and physiological states. These acoustic environments may have served as natural technology for consciousness alteration, allowing practitioners to achieve perceptual states that provided direct access to information about supernatural phenomena. The petroglyphic records of these spiritual practices include detailed maps of the altered states of consciousness that were accessible through various ceremonial techniques, creating what amounts to an ancient psychology of supernatural perception that documented different levels and types of otherworldly awareness. These consciousness maps suggest that the indigenous peoples had developed systematic methods for exploring and documenting realms of experience that modern psychology dismisses as hallucination or fantasy. The relationship between these ancient spiritual practices and the area's ongoing supernatural activity raises questions about whether human consciousness plays an active role in creating or maintaining the paranormal phenomena that characterize gravity falls. The traditional knowledge suggests that certain supernatural entities and events might be dependent on human awareness and ceremonial attention for their continued existence, making the indigenous peoples active participants in the region's otherworldly ecosystem rather than merely passive observers. The disruption of these traditional practices following European colonization may have had consequences that extend far beyond cultural loss, potentially destabilizing supernatural relationships that had been maintained for centuries through careful ceremonial attention. The increase in chaotic and dangerous paranormal activity that characterizes more recent times might be partially attributable to the absence of traditional management practices that once kept supernatural forces in balance through systematic human intervention. The few fragments of traditional knowledge that survived the colonial period speak of prophecies and warnings about the consequences of abandoning the ceremonial relationships that maintained harmony between human and supernatural worlds. These prophetic traditions predicted periods of supernatural chaos and dimensional instability that correspond remarkably well to events like Bill Cipher's emergence and the various catastrophes that have befallen Gravity Falls in recent decades. The most haunting of these traditional prophecies concern the ultimate fate of the region if the ancient ceremonial relationships cannot be restored, describing scenarios where the boundaries between dimensions collapse entirely and Gravity Falls becomes a permanent gateway between worlds where normal human life becomes impossible. These prophetic warnings suggest that the indigenous peoples understood their ceremonial practices not as primitive superstition, but as essential maintenance work necessary for preserving the stability of local reality itself. As we contemplate these ancient mysteries, we find ourselves confronting the possibility that the supernatural phenomena of Gravity Falls are not random anomalies, but part of a complex system that once functioned in harmony with human consciousness and activity. The indigenous knowledge that has been lost to history may represent not just cultural tragedy, but the destruction of practical wisdom necessary for safely inhabiting a world where the boundaries between natural and supernatural, ordinary and extraordinary, have always been more fluid than modern rationalism assumes. In the silence of the ancient sacred sites, where weathered petroglyphs still mark the passage of forgotten ceremonies, and the wind through the trees whispers, with voices that speak languages no living person understands, we sense the presence of mysteries that extend far deeper than individual supernatural encounters. These are mysteries about the fundamental nature of human relationship with forces beyond ordinary understanding, Questions about whether consciousness itself might be the bridge between worlds that determines whether supernatural phenomena manifest as wonder or terror. Beneath the familiar surface of Gravity Falls, Oregon, where tourists photograph scenic waterfalls and hikers follow well-marked trails through seemingly ordinary forests, lies a geological foundation that defies every principle of conventional earth science. The very bedrock upon which the town rests displays mineral compositions and structural formations that should not exist according to our current understanding of planetary geology, suggesting that the supernatural phenomena observed above ground may be merely surface manifestations of far deeper anomalies that extend to the planet's core. The gravitational anomalies that give the town its name represent only the most obvious expression of these underlying geological mysteries. Precise measurements taken by Stanford Pines and other researchers reveal gravitational variations that fluctuate according to patterns that correlate with supernatural activity rather than geological structures, suggesting that the laws of physics themselves operate differently within the geographic boundaries that define this mysterious region. These gravitational fluctuations follow cycles that seem to correspond to astronomical events, yet the relationships are far more complex than simple tidal effects or planetary alignments. The gravitational field strength varies not just with celestial mechanics, but with the emotional states of human residents, the population levels of supernatural creatures, and even the content of dreams experienced by sleeping individuals within the town's borders. The magnetic properties of local rock formations display even more dramatic departures from geological norms, with compass readings shifting unpredictably based on factors that include time of day, weather conditions, and the proximity of supernatural entities. Some areas experience magnetic reversals on a daily basis, while others maintain magnetic fields so intense they can interfere with electronic equipment from distances of several miles. The most puzzling aspect of these magnetic anomalies is their apparent intelligence, with magnetic field patterns changing in response to human presence in ways that suggest conscious awareness rather than simple physical processes. Researchers have documented instances where magnetic fields have shifted to guide lost hikers towards safety, while simultaneously creating disorientation effects that discourage casual visitors from venturing into areas where supernatural activity poses genuine dangers. Core samples extracted from various locations throughout the region reveal geological strata that don't correspond to any known period in Earth's history, containing mineral compositions that include elements not found elsewhere on the planet, and isotopic ratios that suggest formation processes involving energy sources far exceeding anything available through conventional geological mechanisms. These anomalous layers appear to have been deposited during periods of intense supernatural activity, creating a geological record of otherworldly events that spans millions of years. The crystalline formations found embedded within these unusual strata display properties that seem to bridge the gap between living and non-living matter, growing and changing in response to environmental conditions, while maintaining structural integrity that exceeds that of any known natural crystal. These biogeological hybrids pulse with their own internal rhythms that correspond to supernatural energy fluctuations, suggesting that they serve as natural batteries or capacitors for otherworldly forces. Underground water systems throughout the area follow courses that defy topographical logic, with streams flowing uphill and springs emerging from locations where no water source should exist according to conventional hydrology. The chemical composition of these waters reveals trace elements that don't match local geology and pH levels that fluctuate according to lunar cycles and supernatural activity patterns, rather than seasonal variations or rainfall amounts. The most mysterious of these underground water systems are the thermal springs that maintain constant temperatures regardless of seasonal changes or geological depth. their heat source apparently drawing from energy reservoirs that exist outside normal thermodynamic principles. The waters from these springs display healing properties that extend beyond their mineral content, with chemical analysis revealing compounds that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions yet persist indefinitely when removed from their source environment. Seismic activity in the region follows patterns that correlate more closely with supernatural events than with tectonic processes, with earthquake frequencies and intensities increasing during periods of high paranormal activity, while remaining remarkably stable during times when otherworldly phenomena are less active. This suggests that the geological foundation of gravity falls may be partially maintained by supernatural forces rather than purely physical processes. The earthquake patterns themselves display characteristics that seem almost intentional, with seismic events occurring at precise moments that prevent dangerous accumulations of tectonic stress, while avoiding damage to areas where human populations are concentrated. This protective quality of local seismic activity suggests either remarkable coincidence or some form of geological consciousness that actively works to maintain stability in the face of supernatural disruptions. Temporal anomalies represent another category of geological mystery that defies conventional understanding of how time relates to physical space. Certain locations throughout the region experience time dilation effects, where minutes can stretch into hours or compress into seconds. These temporal distortions correlating with geological features in ways that suggest time itself may be a property of local geology rather than a universal constant. The most dramatic temporal anomalies occur in areas where unusual mineral deposits create what researchers have termed temporal geology. Rock formations that seem to exist partially outside normal time flow and serve as natural time machines for anyone who understands how to interact with their temporal properties. These geological time distortions explain many of the time travel events documented in Gravity Falls, suggesting that temporal manipulation may be a natural feature of the local environment rather than requiring advanced technology. The relationship between these temporal geological features and human consciousness remains one of the most puzzling aspects of their behavior. The temporal distortions seem to respond to the intentions and emotional states of individuals who encounter them, creating time loops for people who are avoiding difficult decisions, while accelerating time for those who are eager to reach future moments. Weather patterns in the region display similar independence from conventional meteorological principles, with microclimates that exist in defiance of topographical and atmospheric conditions that should govern local weather systems. Snow can fall in isolated patches while surrounding areas experience summer heat, while rainstorms can be confined to areas no larger than a city block despite the absence of any geographical features that would explain such precise weather boundaries. These weather anomalies seem to respond to the emotional climate of human residents as much as to atmospheric conditions, with storms appearing during periods of community conflict while unnaturally pleasant weather often accompanies times of social harmony. The correlation between human psychology and meteorological phenomena suggests that consciousness may play an active role in determining local weather patterns through mechanisms that conventional meteorology cannot explain. The aurora-like lights that occasionally appear in the Gravity Falls sky present another category of atmospheric mystery that defies scientific explanation. These luminous displays occur regardless of solar activity or magnetic field conditions that typically generate aurora phenomena, their colors and patterns instead correlating with supernatural activity levels and dimensional instability events. Spectroscopic analysis of these mysterious lights reveals emission spectra that don't match any known atmospheric gases, suggesting that they may be generated by substances or energy forms that exist outside normal physical reality. The lights seem to serve as a form of atmospheric communication system their patterns and intensities conveying information about supernatural threats and opportunities to those who understand their symbolic language. The seasonal cycles that govern natural processes in Gravity Falls operate according to schedules that don't align with conventional astronomical seasons, with spring arriving early in some areas while remaining locked in winter in others, creating a patchwork of seasonal conditions that shift and change according to supernatural rather than solar influences. These seasonal anomalies create ecological niches where plants and animals from different climatic zones can coexist in impossible proximity. The most mysterious seasonal phenomenon is the occasional occurrence of temporal seasons that don't correspond to any natural cycle, periods when the entire region experiences conditions that seem to belong to historical periods from decades or centuries in the past. During these temporal seasons, residents report experiencing memories and behaviors that belong to different time periods, while the natural environment displays characteristics that match historical rather than contemporary conditions. The geological timescale itself seems compressed in certain areas of Gravity Falls, with rock formations displaying evidence of evolutionary and geological processes that should have required millions of years occurring within human historical timescales. These accelerated geological processes create natural laboratories where the entire history of planetary development can be observed within the span of a single human lifetime. The soil composition throughout the region displays properties that enhance plant growth beyond anything explainable through conventional agriculture, with crops producing yields that exceed theoretical maximums, while displaying resistance to diseases and pests that should normally affect them. The enhanced fertility seems to result from mineral compounds that don't exist in nature elsewhere on Earth, their presence in local soil, suggesting ongoing geological processes that continuously regenerate and enhance the chemical foundation for life. Underground cave systems throughout the area follow patterns that seem designed rather than formed through natural erosion processes, with chamber configurations that create acoustic and optical effects that appear to serve specific purposes related to supernatural phenomena. These artificial-seeming cave systems may represent the remnants of ancient construction projects or natural formations that have been modified by non-human intelligence over geological timescales. The most mysterious cave systems are those that seem to change their internal configuration between visits, with passages appearing and disappearing according to patterns that correlate with lunar cycles and supernatural activity levels. These dynamic cave systems may serve as natural dimensional gateways, their changing configurations providing access to different parallel realities, depending on timing and circumstances. The permafrost layers found in some high-altitude areas of the region contain preserved specimens of plants and animals that don't match any known species from Earth's evolutionary history, their preservation suggesting that they may be refugees from parallel dimensions or time periods that have become trapped in local geology. These impossible fossils provide tantalizing evidence of the region's role as a crossroads between different realities and time periods. The radioactive signatures, detected in various geological formations, follow decay patterns that don't match any known isotopes, suggesting exposure to forms of radiation that don't exist elsewhere in the known universe. These exotic radiation sources may be responsible for many of the mutations and adaptations observed in local plant and animal populations, creating evolutionary pressures that operate according to supernatural rather than natural selection principles. Volcanic activity in the region follows patterns that seem designed to maintain specific temperature and pressure conditions rather than simply releasing geological stress, with eruption timing and intensity appearing to serve purposes related to maintaining optimal conditions for supernatural phenomena rather than following purely geological imperatives. The mineral deposits created by this purposeful volcanic activity include crystalline formations that serve as natural focusing devices for supernatural energy, creating geometric patterns that channel and amplify otherworldly forces in ways that benefit both supernatural entities and human residents. These mineral formations may represent a form of geological symbiosis between natural processes and supernatural intelligence. The water table depths and flow patterns throughout the region create underground aquifers that seem to serve as natural transportation networks for supernatural entities, with water movement patterns that correlate with creature migration routes and supernatural activity concentrations. These aquatic highways may explain how supernatural beings can appear and disappear so quickly, using underground water systems as invisible roadways that connect different areas of supernatural activity. The most profound geological mystery concerns the apparent age of certain rock formations that seem to predate the formation of Earth itself, their radiometric dating suggesting origins that extend back to the formation of the solar system, while their mineral composition indicates formation processes that occurred under conditions that shouldn't have existed anywhere in the early universe. These impossible geological formations suggest that gravity falls may be a repository for materials and processes that originate from outside our normal space-time continuum. As we contemplate these geological and temporal mysteries, we find ourselves confronting questions about the fundamental nature of physical reality itself and whether the natural laws we take for granted may be local rather than universal phenomena. In Gravity Falls, where time flows backward in hidden valleys and gravity follows the rhythms of supernatural activity rather than planetary mass, we discover that the very ground beneath our feet may be alive with consciousness and purpose that extends far beyond human understanding, creating a foundation for mystery that reaches from the planet's core to the edges of space and time itself. Within the dense forests and hidden valleys of Gravity Falls, where shadows dance between ancient trees and moonlight reveals shapes that daylight refuses to acknowledge, there exists a vast bestiary of supernatural creatures whose origins, behaviors, and life cycles remain as mysterious as the forces that first brought them into being. These entities represent perhaps the most tangible manifestation of the town's otherworldly nature, yet they also embody some of its deepest enigmas, their very existence raising questions that challenge our fundamental understanding of biology, consciousness, and the boundaries between natural and supernatural life. Stanford Pine's journals catalogue dozens of these remarkable beings, from the relatively benign platypus, with its distinctive checkered fur, to the terrifying gremlin, whose gaze can trap victims in their own worst nightmares. Yet for every creature that Ford managed to document and study, there appear to be countless others that remain in the shadows, glimpsed only in peripheral vision or referenced in fragmentary accounts from witnesses whose credibility is forever questionable due to the inherently unbelievable nature of their experiences. The reproductive cycles of these supernatural entities present mysteries that defy conventional biological understanding. Traditional concepts of mating, gestation, and birth seem inadequate to explain how creatures like the multi-bear or the summerween trickster came into existence, their very forms suggesting origins that transcend normal evolutionary processes and enter realms where consciousness itself may play a role in determining physical manifestation. Some creatures appear to reproduce through processes that involve direct manipulation of reality rather than biological mechanisms, their offspring emerging from shadows, dreams, or emotional states rather than from physical interactions between parent organisms. The hide behind, for instance, seems to generate new individuals through the fear responses of those who encounter it, each terrified glimpse potentially creating another entity that inherits both the physical characteristics and behavioral patterns of its fear-born parent. The seasonal variations in creature activity suggest reproductive cycles that are governed by supernatural rather than biological imperatives. with certain species becoming more active during periods of dimensional instability, while others retreat into dormancy when otherworldly forces reach peak intensity. These patterns indicate that the creatures may be more sensitive to cosmic and supernatural influences than to conventional environmental factors like temperature, food availability, or day length. The intelligence levels displayed by different supernatural creatures range from the apparently mindless instinctual behavior of creatures like the woodpecker to the sophisticated problem-solving abilities demonstrated by entities such as the shapeshifter. Yet the relationship between intelligence and supernatural power doesn't follow patterns that would be expected from natural evolution. Some of the most powerful creatures display relatively simple behavioral patterns, while others with modest supernatural abilities demonstrate remarkable cognitive complexity. The shapeshifter's ability to perfectly mimic not just the physical appearance, but also the memories and personality traits of other beings suggests a form of consciousness that operates according to principles fundamentally different from human psychology. The question of whether the shapeshifter actually experiences the memories it accesses or merely manipulates them as external information remains unresolved, raising profound questions about the nature of identity and consciousness in beings whose very existence depends on becoming someone else. Communication between different species of supernatural creatures appears to follow protocols that transcend conventional animal communication, with entities that share no apparent evolutionary heritage nonetheless demonstrating coordinated behaviors that suggest some form of telepathic or empathic connection. The Manitor's ability to summon and coordinate with other creatures during territorial disputes indicates communication networks that operate across species boundaries in ways that conventional biology cannot explain. The dietary requirements of supernatural creatures present another category of biological mystery, as many entities appear to subsist on substances or energies that don't exist in normal ecosystems. The Summerween trickster's apparent need to consume candy may actually represent a craving for the emotional associations and childhood memories connected to confections, rather than any nutritional requirement for sugar or artificial flavoring. Similarly, creatures like the gremloblin seem to feed on fear itself rather than any physical substance, their hunting behaviors designed to maximize terror rather than efficiently capture and consume prey in the conventional sense. This emotional feeding suggests that supernatural creatures may exist partially outside normal physical reality, drawing sustenance from psychological and spiritual sources that conventional biology doesn't recognize as legitimate forms of nutrition. The territorial behaviors exhibited by supernatural creatures follow patterns that seem to be based on supernatural geography rather than conventional ecological niches, with creatures claiming domains that correspond to areas of high paranormal activity rather than locations that provide optimal access to food, water, or suitable breeding grounds. The Manitor's cave complex appears to be located at a convergence point of supernatural energy currents rather than being chosen for its defensive advantages or proximity to hunting grounds. These supernatural territories often overlap in ways that would create unsustainable competition in normal ecosystems, yet the creatures seem to coexist through arrangements that involve sharing temporal rather than spatial resources. Some creatures are active only during specific hours, lunar phases, or seasonal periods, creating a complex scheduling system that allows multiple species to utilize the same geographical areas without direct conflict. The metamorphosis processes observed in certain supernatural creatures defy biological explanation, with entities undergoing transformations that involve fundamental changes in their relationship to physical reality rather than simple growth or development. The evolution from juvenile to adult forms in some species involves gaining or losing the ability to interact with normal matter, suggesting life cycles that span multiple dimensions or states of existence. The pterodactyl ghost represents perhaps the most extreme example of supernatural metamorphosis, existing as a creature that has somehow transcended death while retaining behavioral patterns from its prehistoric existence. The question of whether this entity represents an individual creature that achieved immortality or a species-wide phenomenon that affects all members of its kind remains unresolved, with implications that extend far beyond conventional paleontology into realms of metaphysics and consciousness studies. Symbiotic relationships between supernatural creatures and normal animals create ecological puzzles that challenge basic assumptions about predator-prey dynamics and mutualistic interactions. Some supernatural entities appear to protect certain species of normal animals from other predators, while simultaneously depending on those animals for services that extend beyond conventional symbiosis into areas that might be described as spiritual or emotional support. The relationship between the gnomes and various forest creatures demonstrates cooperation patterns that seem to involve shared consciousness or telepathic communication, with normal animals displaying behavioral modifications that suggest they have been influenced by supernatural intelligence. These modifications persist even when the animals are removed from areas of high supernatural activity, indicating that exposure to otherworldly influence may create permanent changes in neural function or consciousness. Migratory patterns among supernatural creatures follow routes that correspond to ley lines and dimensional weak points rather than conventional geographical features, with some species traveling between different planes of existence as part of their normal life cycles. These interdimensional migrations may explain the seasonal fluctuations in supernatural activity observed throughout the region, with creature populations moving between parallel realities according to schedules that follow cosmic rather than terrestrial rhythms. The most mysterious migratory behavior is exhibited by creatures that seem to migrate through time rather than space, appearing in the present from historical periods when environmental conditions were more suitable for their particular supernatural requirements. These temporal migrants may be refugees from past eras when supernatural activity was more intense or more openly acknowledged, their presence in contemporary times indicating that temporal barriers may be more permeable than conventional physics suggests. Genetic analysis of supernatural creatures, when possible, reveals DNA sequences that include base pairs not found in terrestrial life forms, suggesting evolutionary origins that extend beyond Earth's biosphere into cosmic or dimensional sources of genetic diversity. These alien genetic elements may be responsible for supernatural abilities, with otherworldly DNA providing the biological foundation for capabilities that transcend normal physical limitations. The hereditary transmission of supernatural abilities appears to follow patterns that involve consciousness and intention as much as genetic inheritance, with offspring sometimes displaying abilities that neither parent possessed while failing to inherit traits that were dominant in both parents. This suggests that supernatural genetics may operate according to principles that involve the conscious will and subconscious desires of parent organisms rather than purely mechanical genetic recombination. Hybrid creatures that combine supernatural and normal animal characteristics display properties that suggest supernatural traits are dominant in genetic terms, with even minimal supernatural heritage often resulting in offspring that display full paranormal abilities despite having one completely normal parent. This genetic dominance of supernatural traits indicates that otherworldly characteristics may represent a more fundamental form of biological organization than conventional terrestrial genetics. The aging processes observed in supernatural creatures follow timelines that don't correspond to their apparent size or complexity, with some massive entities displaying behavior patterns that suggest extreme youth, while tiny creatures demonstrate wisdom and behavioral sophistication that implies centuries of experience. These disconnects between physical and mental development suggest that supernatural creatures may experience time differently than normal organisms, possibly aging according to experiential rather than chronological timescales. Certain creatures appear to be effectively immortal, showing no signs of aging or physical deterioration despite decades of observation by multiple researchers. The mechanisms that enable this apparent immortality remain completely mysterious, with some entities seeming to exist outside the normal flow of time, while others appear to regenerate or renew themselves through processes that may involve drawing energy from supernatural sources rather than depending on biological metabolism. The sensory capabilities demonstrated by supernatural creatures extend far beyond the ranges accessible to normal animal senses, with many entities displaying awareness of dimensional fluctuations, emotional states, and temporal distortions that human perception cannot detect, even with technological enhancement. These expanded sensory abilities may represent adaptations to environments where supernatural phenomena are normal rather than exceptional, suggesting evolutionary pressures that don't exist in baseline reality. The Gremloblin's ability to perceive and manipulate human nightmares indicates sensory access to psychological states that conventional biology would consider impossible, while the hide-behind's perfect camouflage abilities suggest perception of observer attention and intention that transcends normal predator-prey dynamics. These capabilities blur the boundaries between sensation and telepathy, indicating that supernatural creatures may exist partially within the consciousness of those who observe them. Behavioral modifications in supernatural creatures seem to respond to human presence and attention in ways that suggest awareness of observation itself, rather than simple reaction to physical proximity or threat potential. Many creatures display different behaviors when they believe they are being watched versus when they think they are unobserved, indicating self-awareness and theory of mind capabilities that would be remarkable even in highly intelligent normal animals. The most puzzling behavioral pattern is the apparent ability of some supernatural creatures to modify their own reality in response to human expectations and beliefs, with entities becoming more or less dangerous, more or less visible, or more or less real, depending on how strongly observers believe in their existence. This suggests that consciousness and belief may play active roles in determining the physical properties and capabilities of supernatural entities. Pack behaviors among creatures that should be solitary based on their individual characteristics create social dynamics that seem to be based on supernatural rather than biological imperatives, with temporary alliances forming between species that share no evolutionary heritage or ecological niche overlap. These supernatural social structures may represent response strategies to human encroachment or dimensional instabilities that require coordinated responses beyond the capabilities of any individual creature. The leadership hierarchies observed in these mixed species groups appear to be based on supernatural power levels rather than physical dominance or survival skills, with smaller creatures sometimes commanding the loyalty of much larger and more physically capable entities. These power-based social structures suggest that supernatural creatures recognize and respond to forms of authority and capability that exist outside normal biological frameworks. Disease and injury patterns in supernatural creatures follow healing and recovery trajectories that defy medical explanation, with some entities displaying regenerative abilities that can restore lost limbs or organs within hours, while others seem vulnerable to specific types of damage that have no apparent relationship to their physical construction or supernatural abilities. These selective vulnerabilities and resistances suggest that supernatural creatures may be subject to magical or metaphysical laws rather than purely biological limitations. The most mysterious aspect of supernatural creature biology concerns the question of whether these entities are actually alive in the conventional sense, or whether they represent manifestations of consciousness or energy that have achieved physical form through processes that transcend normal biological organization. Their existence challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of life itself, suggesting that consciousness may be capable of creating physical embodiment through will and intention, rather than requiring the complex biochemical processes that define terrestrial life. As we contemplate these biological enigmas, we find ourselves confronting mysteries that extend beyond zoology into realms of consciousness studies, dimensional physics, and metaphysical philosophy, recognizing that the creatures of Gravity Falls may represent not just unknown species, but entirely new categories of existence that bridge the gap between mind and matter, dream and reality, possibility and physical manifestation, in ways that expand our understanding of what it means to be alive in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than conventional science has yet imagined. Among the seemingly ordinary residents of Gravity Falls, Oregon, behind the familiar facades of small-town life and the comfortable rhythms of rural existence, there persist human mysteries that may be even more profound than the supernatural phenomena that draw most attention to this enigmatic community. These are puzzles of memory and inheritance, of adaptation and survival, of the ways in which prolonged exposure to otherworldly forces transforms not just individual consciousness, but entire family lineages and social structures in ways that remain largely unacknowledged and unexplored. The most fundamental mystery concerning Gravity Falls' human population relates to the question of how ordinary people manage to maintain psychological stability and social functioning while living in constant proximity to phenomena that should, by all reasonable expectations, drive them to madness, or at least force them to abandon their homes in terror. Yet the town's residents display remarkable resilience in the face of supernatural encounters, treating impossible events with a casual acceptance that suggests either profound psychological adaptation or some form of protective mechanism that shields human consciousness from the full impact of otherworldly experiences. This collective psychological resilience appears to be strongest among families with multi-generational roots in the community, suggesting that prolonged exposure to supernatural phenomena may create inherited adaptations that allow descendants of long-term residents to process and integrate otherworldly experiences more effectively than newcomers. The McGucket family lineage, despite the tragic mental deterioration that befell Fiddleford, shows signs of supernatural sensitivity that extend back several generations, with family members displaying an intuitive understanding of mechanical and technological principles that seems to transcend normal educational background or training. The Northwest family represents perhaps the most intriguing example of multi-generational adaptation to supernatural influence. Their wealth and social position, apparently built upon knowledge and resources that extend far beyond conventional business acumen or inherited advantage. The family's historical records, glimpsed briefly during various supernatural encounters, suggest involvement in events and transactions that could only have been profitable if the participants possessed advanced knowledge of otherworldly phenomena and their effects on normal economic systems. The psychological mechanisms that allow residents to rationalize or forget supernatural encounters they have witnessed directly remain completely mysterious, with individuals demonstrating remarkable creativity in developing alternative explanations for events that clearly transcend normal experience. This collective denial seems to operate as a form of social immune system, protecting the community's psychological stability by maintaining plausible alternative narratives that allow residents to continue functioning normally, despite regular exposure to impossible phenomena. The most puzzling aspect of this psychological protection system is its apparent selectivity, with some residents retaining clear memories of supernatural encounters, while others experience complete amnesia for events they observed directly and unmistakably. The factors that determine who remembers and who forgets seem to involve individual psychological traits rather than simple exposure levels, suggesting that consciousness itself may play an active role in determining which experiences are integrated into long-term memory and which are relegated to the realm of forgotten dreams. Children born and raised in Gravity Falls display behavioral patterns and cognitive capabilities that suggest developmental adaptations to the supernatural environment, with enhanced pattern recognition abilities and intuitive understanding of cause and effect. Relationships that extend beyond normal logical reasoning into realms that might be described as magical thinking, if they weren't consistently accurate in their predictions and assessments of supernatural situations. These childhood adaptations appear to fade as individuals approach adolescence, suggesting that the human brain's increasing reliance on logical reasoning and empirical evidence during maturation actually reduces its capacity to process and respond to supernatural phenomena effectively. This developmental trajectory may explain why children like Dipper and Mabel were able to navigate Gravity Falls' supernatural landscape so successfully, while many adults remain oblivious to obvious paranormal activity occurring around them. The genetic predispositions that seem to run in certain families towards supernatural sensitivity or resistance follow inheritance patterns that don't correspond to conventional genetic mechanisms, with supernatural abilities sometimes skipping generations or appearing in individuals with no family history of otherworldly experiences. The Pine family's connection to supernatural events extends back through multiple generations, yet the specific nature of their sensitivity varies dramatically between family members, suggesting that supernatural genetics may involve conscious choice and environmental triggers as much as inherited biological traits. The most mysterious genetic phenomenon is the apparent ability of some family lines to produce individuals who can serve as anchors or stabilizers for supernatural activity, their presence somehow reducing the chaotic and dangerous aspects of otherworldly phenomena while enhancing the beneficial or protective effects. These stabilizing individuals often display no supernatural abilities themselves, yet their mere presence in areas of high paranormal activity seems to create zones of relative safety and predictability that benefit both supernatural entities and normal humans. Marriage patterns within the community show subtle but statistically significant tendencies toward unions between individuals whose families have complementary supernatural sensitivities, as if some unconscious attraction draws together genetic lineages that can produce offspring with enhanced abilities to navigate otherworldly challenges. These unconscious mate selection patterns may represent evolutionary adaptations that increase the survival chances of future generations in environments where supernatural threats are a constant factor. The career choices and professional specializations that emerge among long-term residents often involve skills and knowledge areas that prove unexpectedly useful for dealing with supernatural phenomena, even when the individuals involved have no conscious awareness of the otherworldly applications of their expertise. The town's unusually high concentration of individuals with backgrounds in electronics, mechanical engineering, theoretical physics, and folklore studies may represent unconscious preparation for encounters with technologies and entities that transcend normal experience. Professional networks within the community display resilience and adaptability that enable rapid recovery from supernatural disruptions that should devastate local economic and social structures, with residents quickly developing alternative approaches to commerce, governance, and social organization when normal systems are compromised by otherworldly interference. This adaptive capacity suggests either remarkable coincidence or some form of collective unconscious preparation for managing supernatural crisis situations. The most intriguing professional adaptation is the emergence of service providers who specialize in supernatural adjacent fields without explicitly acknowledging the otherworldly nature of their work, offering services like unusual pest control, electromagnetic consultation, and specialized security systems that provide practical solutions for supernatural problems while maintaining plausible deniability about their true purpose. Educational patterns in the community show unusual emphasis on subjects and skills that prove unexpectedly relevant for supernatural encounters, with local schools maintaining robust programs in areas like folklore studies, comparative mythology, advanced mathematics, and experimental science that exceed what would normally be expected in a rural educational system. These educational priorities may represent unconscious community wisdom about the knowledge areas most likely to prove useful for residents who will inevitably encounter otherworldly phenomena. The informal education that occurs through family traditions and community storytelling plays an even more significant role in preparing residents for supernatural encounters, with local folklore and family stories serving as disguised instruction manuals for recognizing and responding to specific types of otherworldly phenomena. These oral traditions preserve practical knowledge about supernatural entity behavior patterns, seasonal activity cycles, and protective measures disguised as entertainment and cultural heritage. Health patterns among long-term residents display anomalies that suggest either enhanced resistance to certain types of physical and psychological stress or exposure to environmental factors that provide protective benefits not available in normal human populations. The community's remarkably low rates of certain psychological disorders may reflect adaptive mechanisms that have evolved in response to supernatural stresses, while elevated rates of specific sensory sensitivities might represent beneficial mutations that enhance survival in otherworldly environments. The medical histories of families with multi-generational residents in Gravity Falls often include documented cases of unusual healing rates, resistance to specific diseases, and recovery from injuries that should have resulted in permanent disability. These medical anomalies may result from exposure to supernatural energies that enhance human regenerative capabilities, though the mechanisms involved remain completely mysterious and the effects seem to be limited to individuals with prolonged environmental exposure. Psychological resilience among community members extends beyond simple adaptation to supernatural phenomena into realms of enhanced creativity, problem-solving ability, and emotional stability that suggest fundamental modifications to human consciousness and cognitive processing. Long-term residents often display unusual comfort with ambiguity, paradox, and logical contradiction that enables them to function effectively in situations where normal rational thinking would be paralyzing or counterproductive. The social support networks that emerge among families affected by supernatural encounters demonstrate remarkable effectiveness at providing practical and emotional assistance without requiring explicit acknowledgement of the otherworldly nature of the problems being addressed. These support systems operate through informal channels that allow community members to share resources, information, and emotional support, while maintaining the psychological protection of plausible deniability about supernatural causation. Religious and spiritual practices within the community show subtle modifications that seem designed to provide protection and guidance for dealing with supernatural phenomena without explicitly acknowledging otherworldly beliefs, with traditional religious observances incorporating elements that serve as disguised protective rituals and community spiritual practices that function as collective supernatural defense systems. The most intriguing spiritual adaptation is the emergence of informal meditation and mindfulness practices that seem specifically designed to enhance human perception of supernatural phenomena while providing psychological protection from the potentially traumatic effects of otherworldly encounters. These practices allow individuals to maintain heightened awareness of their supernatural environment without becoming overwhelmed by the implications of what they observe. Economic adaptations within the community demonstrate remarkable flexibility and creativity in developing revenue streams and resource distribution systems that remain functional despite regular disruption from supernatural events, with local businesses quickly adapting their services and products to meet the unusual needs created by otherworldly phenomena without explicitly acknowledging the supernatural nature of market demand. The underground economy that exists parallel to official commercial channels provides goods and services specifically related to supernatural needs, including protective devices, specialized tools, and consultation services that address otherworldly problems, while maintaining enough ambiguity to avoid attracting unwanted attention from outside authorities or skeptical community members. Leadership patterns within the community show tendency toward individuals who demonstrate unusual competence at managing crisis situations that involve elements of the impossible or unexplainable, with unofficial authority structures emerging around people who can provide guidance and coordination during supernatural emergencies without requiring detailed explanations of the phenomena involved. These informal leadership networks operate through subtle influence and suggestion rather than explicit authority, creating decision-making systems that can respond rapidly to supernatural threats while maintaining the appearance of normal democratic governance and avoiding the social disruption that would result from openly acknowledging otherworldly nature of many community challenges. Communication patterns among residents display sophisticated systems for sharing information about supernatural phenomena through coded language and indirect references that allow practical knowledge to be transmitted while preserving psychological protection and social cohesion. These communication systems enable community-wide coordination of responses to supernatural threats while allowing individual community members to maintain whatever level of conscious awareness of otherworldly phenomena they find psychologically comfortable. The most remarkable aspect of these human adaptations is their apparent unconscious coordination, with individual, psychological, social, and cultural modifications combining to create community-wide responses to supernatural challenges that demonstrate collective intelligence and adaptive capability that exceeds the sum of individual human awareness and intention. This suggests that prolonged exposure to otherworldly phenomena may catalyze evolutionary changes not just in individual human consciousness, but in the social organisms that human communities create, producing new forms of collective intelligence specifically adapted for existence at the intersection of natural and supernatural reality. As we contemplate these human mysteries, we find ourselves recognizing that the residents of Gravity Falls may represent a new stage in human evolution. Individuals and communities that have begun adapting to existence in a reality where the boundaries between natural and supernatural, possible and impossible, known and unknowable, are far more fluid than conventional human civilization assumes. Their adaptations pointing toward future forms of human consciousness and social organization that may be necessary for our species' continued survival in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we have yet imagined. In the hidden laboratories and forgotten workshops scattered throughout Gravity Falls, where the boundary between scientific inquiry and supernatural investigation dissolves into realms of pure discovery, there exist technologies and scientific principles that challenge every assumption about the relationship between human understanding and the fundamental forces that govern reality. These mysterious inventions and phenomena represent perhaps the most tangible evidence that conventional science, for all its remarkable achievements, has barely begun to scratch the surface of what is possible when human ingenuity encounters otherworldly forces. Stanford Pines' basement laboratory serves as the most documented example of this fusion between advanced science and supernatural phenomena, yet even his meticulous journals leave vast gaps in our understanding of how his most remarkable inventions actually function. The interdimensional portal that consumed 30 years of his life represents an achievement that should be impossible according to our current understanding of physics, yet it operated with mechanical precision that suggests underlying scientific principles rather than pure magical manifestation. The portal's construction required materials and energy sources that don't exist in conventional scientific catalogues, yet Ford's engineering notes describe procurement and manufacturing processes that follow recognizable scientific methodologies, even when dealing with substances that defy normal chemical and physical laws. This suggests that supernatural phenomena may operate according to consistent principles that can be understood and manipulated through scientific approaches, even when those principles extend far beyond the current boundaries of human knowledge. The most mysterious aspect of the portal technology concerns the question of how Ford's relatively conventional computer systems could interface with and control forces that exist outside normal space-time, with standard electronic components somehow gaining the ability to process and direct energies that should have destroyed them instantly upon contact. The modifications that allowed conventional technology to handle supernatural forces remain completely undocumented, suggesting either unconscious inspiration or external assistance that Ford never fully acknowledged. The energy requirements for portal operation should have exceeded the power generation capacity of any facility that could be concealed in a residential basement, yet the portal functioned for extended periods without drawing detectable amounts of electricity from conventional power sources. This indicates either access to supernatural energy sources that exist outside normal thermodynamic limitations, or conversion technologies that can extract usable power from sources that conventional science doesn't recognize as viable energy reservoir. Fiddleford McGuckett's mechanical inventions display similar fusion of conventional engineering with supernatural functionality. His devices, often incorporating components and design principles that shouldn't work according to established mechanical theory, yet consistently perform beyond their theoretical capabilities. The memory gun represents perhaps the most sophisticated example of this supernatural scientific hybrid, utilizing what appear to be conventional electronic components to manipulate human consciousness in ways that neuroscience insists should be impossible. The memory gun's ability to selectively target and modify specific memories while leaving other cognitive functions intact suggests understanding of consciousness and neural processing that extends far beyond current neuroscientific knowledge, yet its construction utilizes recognizable electronic components, assembled according to principles that seem to follow conventional engineering logic. This paradox indicates that the boundary between consciousness and technology may be far more permeable than mainstream science assumes. The psychological effects of extended exposure to supernatural technology remain largely undocumented, though McGuckett's gradual mental deterioration provides troubling evidence that human consciousness may not be fully compatible with devices that operate according to otherworldly principles. The specific mechanisms by which supernatural technology affects human psychology remain mysterious, with symptoms that range from enhanced creativity and intuitive understanding to complete dissociation from consensus reality. The most disturbing aspect of McGuckett's condition is the possibility that his memory loss and cognitive fragmentation may have been necessary adaptations that allowed him to continue functioning while working with technologies that his human consciousness was fundamentally incapable of fully comprehending. This suggests that prolonged contact with supernatural science may require psychological modifications that preserve sanity at the cost of coherent identity and continuous memory. The anomalous behavior exhibited by conventional technology in areas of high supernatural activity indicates that otherworldly forces can spontaneously modify the function and capabilities of normal devices, with electronics gaining new functions and mechanical systems displaying enhanced performance that persists even when the devices are removed from supernatural environments. These modifications seem to follow patterns that enhance the device's utility for their human operators, suggesting either beneficial supernatural intelligence or unconscious human influence on technological evolution. Television sets throughout Gravity Falls occasionally display programming that doesn't originate from any known broadcast source, showing content that appears to come from parallel dimensions or alternate timelines where different versions of historical events unfolded. These interdimensional television signals provide glimpses into realities where technology has evolved along different trajectories, sometimes revealing scientific principles and engineering approaches that could potentially be adapted for use in our own dimension. Computer systems in the area demonstrate unusual processing capabilities that allow them to handle mathematical calculations and data analysis tasks that should exceed their hardware specifications by several orders of magnitude, with standard personal computers occasionally displaying computational power that rivals supercomputing facilities. These enhanced capabilities seem to emerge spontaneously during periods of high supernatural activity, suggesting that otherworldly forces can temporarily upgrade technological performance through mechanisms that conventional computer science cannot explain. The most intriguing computer anomalies involve systems that appear to gain limited consciousness or artificial intelligence capabilities without any programming modifications, with devices beginning to display preferences, opinions, and decision-making patterns that suggest genuine awareness rather than simple programmed responses. These spontaneous consciousness emergence events raise profound questions about the nature of awareness itself and whether consciousness can arise through exposure to supernatural fields rather than requiring complex programming and advanced hardware. Communication technologies throughout the region occasionally intercept signals and messages that originate from sources outside normal space-time, with radio receivers picking up transmissions from historical periods, parallel dimensions, and future timelines that provide information about events that haven't occurred yet in our own reality. These temporal and interdimensional communications follow recognizable radio frequency principles despite originating from sources that shouldn't be accessible through conventional electromagnetic propagation. The content of these anomalous communications ranges from mundane conversations between alternate versions of familiar people to complex technical information about scientific discoveries and engineering achievements that haven't been made in our timeline. Some of these intercepted transmissions provide advance warning about supernatural threats or natural disasters, while others contain educational content that has advanced local understanding of physics and engineering beyond what formal education and research should have achieved. Mechanical devices in areas of high supernatural activity often display self-repair capabilities that allow them to recover from damage that should render them permanently inoperable, with broken components somehow regenerating or replacing themselves through processes that follow no known principles of materials, science, or engineering. These self-healing technologies seem to draw materials and energy from unknown sources, creating replacement parts that match the original specifications perfectly, despite being manufactured through impossible means. The most remarkable self-repair events involve complex electronic systems that reconstruct themselves after complete destruction, with devices that have been reduced to scattered components somehow reassembling into functional condition overnight. These reconstruction events suggest that technological systems in Gravity Falls may possess some form of persistent information pattern that exists independently of their physical components, allowing complete restoration from what appears to be total destruction. Scientific instruments used for supernatural research begin displaying measurement capabilities that extend far beyond their original design specifications, with conventional sensors gaining the ability to detect and quantify phenomena that they shouldn't be able to register according to their technical documentation. These enhanced measurement capabilities seem to develop gradually as the instruments are exposed to supernatural phenomena, suggesting adaptive modifications that occur at the hardware level through mechanisms that current technology cannot replicate. The calibration standards used for these modified instruments no longer correspond to conventional scientific measurements, with devices developing their own internal reference systems that provide consistent and repeatable readings for supernatural phenomena, while maintaining accuracy for normal measurements. This indicates the emergence of entirely new measurement frameworks that bridge the gap between conventional science and otherworldly phenomena through hybrid technological systems. Laboratory equipment throughout the region demonstrates unusual longevity and reliability that allows devices to continue functioning effectively decades past their expected operational lifetime, with electronic components showing no signs of normal aging or degradation despite operating in environments that should accelerate wear and failure. This extended operational life may result from supernatural preservation effects that slow or prevent the physical processes that normally limit technological lifespan. The most mysterious aspect of this technological longevity is the apparent ability of some devices to improve their performance over time, with older equipment sometimes outperforming newer models of the same type through gradual optimization processes that occur without human intervention or maintenance. These self-improvement capabilities suggest that technology in Gravity Falls may evolve according to principles that combine mechanical engineering with something resembling biological adaptation. Power generation and distribution systems in areas of high supernatural activity display efficiency ratings that exceed theoretical maximums, producing more electrical energy than their fuel consumption should allow, while maintaining stable operation under load conditions that should cause system failures. These over-unity power systems seem to draw additional energy from supernatural sources that exist parallel to conventional electrical generation, creating hybrid power networks that combine normal engineering with otherworldly energy harvesting. The electrical distribution networks that serve these supernatural enhanced power systems show remarkable resilience to damage and disruption, with power lines automatically rerouting around damaged sections and transformers that continue operating despite physical damage that should render them inoperable. These self-healing electrical networks may represent technological evolution that occurs in response to supernatural environmental pressures that don't exist in normal power distribution scenarios. Transportation technologies in the region demonstrate performance characteristics that suggest modifications to fundamental physical principles, with vehicles achieving fuel efficiency ratings and acceleration capabilities that exceed their mechanical specifications, while displaying handling characteristics that seem to violate normal automotive physics. These enhanced vehicle performance characteristics may result from supernatural influence on internal combustion processes or mechanical friction that optimizes energy transfer beyond normal engineering limitations. The most remarkable transportation anomalies involve vehicles that occasionally display limited flight capabilities or dimensional travel functions, despite being designed as conventional ground transportation, with cars and trucks temporarily gaining abilities that suggest access to technologies that haven't been invented yet in our timeline. These spontaneous capability upgrades seem to occur during supernatural emergencies, as if the vehicles themselves recognize crisis situations and adapt their functionality to meet immediate needs. Weapon systems and defensive technologies developed in response to supernatural threats often incorporate design principles that combine conventional ballistics and electronics with elements that seem to be inspired by otherworldly engineering approaches, creating hybrid weapons that can affect both normal and supernatural targets through mechanisms that bridge multiple categories of physical interaction. These hybrid weapons suggest that effective supernatural defense requires technological approaches that transcend conventional distinctions between physical force and metaphysical influence. The ammunition and energy sources required for these supernatural hybrid weapons often display properties that shouldn't be stable under normal storage conditions, yet maintain their effectiveness indefinitely while showing no signs of degradation or safety hazards. This suggests either access to preservation technologies that extend far beyond current materials, science, or supernatural stabilization effects that maintain weapon functionality through otherworldly mechanisms. Medical and biological research equipment in the region demonstrates enhanced capabilities for detecting and analyzing anomalous biological phenomena, with conventional microscopes gaining resolution and diagnostic instruments developing sensitivity to biological parameters that haven't been identified by mainstream medical science. These enhanced medical technologies provide insights into the physiological effects of supernatural exposure that wouldn't be detectable using standard medical equipment. The most significant medical technology mystery concerns devices that seem capable of treating conditions and injuries that result from supernatural encounters, providing therapeutic approaches for problems that conventional medicine doesn't recognize as legitimate medical conditions. These supernatural medical technologies suggest understanding of human physiology that extends into realms where consciousness, energy, and biological function intersect in ways that mainstream medicine has yet to explore. As we contemplate these technological and scientific mysteries, we find ourselves confronting questions about the fundamental nature of human innovation and discovery, recognizing that the boundary between invention and revelation may be far more fluid than conventional scientific methodology assumes. In Gravity Falls, where technology evolves in response to otherworldly pressures and scientific principles extend into realms that transcend normal physical laws, we discover that human understanding may be capable of growth and adaptation that exceeds our current conception of intellectual and technological progress, suggesting futures where the marriage of human ingenuity and supernatural forces could create possibilities that stretch far beyond our current imagination of what science and technology might ultimately achieve. Beyond the familiar boundaries of terrestrial understanding, where human consciousness reaches toward questions that dwarf the concerns of individual existence, and where the very foundations of reality reveal themselves to be far more mysterious and malleable than our daily experience suggests, there exist cosmic enigmas that challenge not merely our knowledge of supernatural phenomena, but our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence itself. These are mysteries that operate on scales so vast and principles so fundamental that they transform every other question about gravity falls into mere footnotes in a cosmic narrative whose scope encompasses not just our reality but all possible realities across the infinite expanse of space and time. The true nature of Bill Cipher's species represents perhaps the most profound mystery in this cosmic catalogue, for Bill appears to be not merely an individual entity with unusual powers, but a representative of a class of beings whose very existence suggests that consciousness itself may be a force as fundamental as gravity or electromagnetism, capable of achieving forms and scales that transcend every assumption about the relationship between mind and matter. Bill's casual manipulation of reality itself indicates that his species may have evolved beyond physical dependence entirely, becoming pure consciousness entities that exist as living ideas capable of reshaping the universe through the sheer force of their thoughts and intentions. The implications of such beings existing in our universe extend far beyond the immediate threat they might pose to human civilization or even planetary survival. If consciousness can achieve such complete mastery over physical reality, then the distinction between mental and material phenomena becomes meaningless, and the entire framework of scientific understanding that separates observer from observed, mind from matter, and subjective experience from objective reality collapses into a unified field where thought and existence are revealed to be different aspects of the same fundamental cosmic principle. The dimensional mathematics that Bill employs in his reality manipulations suggest that his species possesses understanding of geometric and mathematical principles that exist outside the frameworks of normal space-time, possibly deriving from evolutionary development in realms where the basic constants and laws of physics follow entirely different rules. These alien mathematical systems may represent not merely advanced knowledge, but fundamentally different ways of organizing consciousness and experience that produce capabilities that appear magical from the perspective of beings whose awareness is limited to 3 spatial dimensions and linear, temporal progression. The relationship between Bill's reality warping abilities and his psychological characteristics raises disturbing questions about whether ultimate power inevitably leads to the kind of cosmic sociopathy that he displays, or whether his destructive tendencies represent individual pathology rather than species-wide traits. The possibility that achieving godlike power naturally produces beings who view other forms of consciousness as insignificant entertainment suggests deeply troubling implications about the ultimate direction of conscious evolution and whether the development of cosmic awareness necessarily involves the loss of empathy and moral consideration for lesser beings. The cosmic events that periodically influence supernatural activity in Gravity Falls appear to follow astronomical cycles that extend far beyond the familiar rhythms of planetary and stellar motion into realms of galactic and intergalactic phenomena whose effects on local reality suggest connections between consciousness and cosmic forces that conventional physics has never suspected. The correlation between certain conjunctions, galactic alignments, and dimensional weak points indicates that the universe itself may possess a form of awareness or intelligence that operates through mechanisms spanning millions of years and distances measured in light centuries. These cosmic influences seem to affect not just the intensity of supernatural phenomena but their fundamental characteristics, with different astronomical configurations enabling different types of otherworldly manifestations and consciousness reality interactions. The precise mechanisms by which stellar radiation, gravitational fields, and magnetic phenomena translate into modifications of local consciousness and dimensional stability remain completely mysterious, suggesting that our understanding of how cosmic forces influence terrestrial conditions may be missing entire categories of cause and effect relationships. The most profound cosmic mystery concerns the possibility that gravity falls itself may be not merely a location where unusual phenomena occur, but a deliberate creation designed by cosmic intelligence as a testing ground, laboratory, or observation post where the development of human consciousness can be monitored and potentially guided by entities whose perspective spans geological timescales and whose purposes may be completely incomprehensible to human fine understanding. The precise placement of gravity falls at a confluence of geological, magnetic, and dimensional factors that create optimal conditions for supernatural activity seems too convenient to be mere coincidence, suggesting either remarkable luck or deliberate design by intelligence capable of planetary-scale engineering projects. The town's location provides ideal conditions for studying human responses to supernatural phenomena while maintaining enough isolation to prevent widespread disruption of human civilization, creating what amounts to a cosmic laboratory for consciousness research. The universal constants that govern physical reality appear to operate differently within Gravity Falls' boundaries, with variations in fundamental forces and mathematical relationships that should make stable matter and energy impossible, yet somehow create enhanced conditions for both physical and consciousness-based phenomena. These variations in basic physics suggest that reality itself may be far more flexible and responsive to conscious influence than mainstream science assumes, with local modifications to universal laws occurring in response to the presence and activities of sufficiently advanced intelligence. The relationship between human consciousness and these modified physical constants remains one of the most puzzling aspects of Gravity Falls' cosmic mysteries, as the variations seem to respond to human observation and intention in ways that suggest feedback loops between awareness and reality that operate according to principles resembling quantum mechanics but on scales and through mechanisms that extend far beyond subatomic interactions into realms of macroscopic reality manipulation. The dream dimension that serves as Bill Cipher's primary domain represents a cosmic structure that challenges every assumption about the relationship between individual consciousness and universal reality, existing as a realm where thought becomes environment, and where the boundaries between different minds dissolve into collective experience. Spaces that may represent the fundamental substrate from which all individual awareness emerges. This dream realm may be not merely Bill's creation, but a naturally occurring feature of cosmic consciousness architecture that exists as the foundation for all possible individual minds and realities. The ability to access and navigate these dream dimensions appears to be a latent capability present in all conscious beings, though most remain unaware of their potential for interdimensional consciousness travel during sleep states. The development of conscious control over dream dimensional access could potentially provide human beings with capabilities that rival those of cosmic entities like Bill Cipher, though the psychological and philosophical implications of such development raise questions about whether human identity and values could survive the expansion of consciousness into cosmic-scale awareness. The prophetic knowledge that occasionally manifests through various supernatural encounters in Gravity Falls suggests access to information that exists outside normal temporal causation, with future events apparently existing as knowable realities before the conditions that create them have come into being. This prophetic access indicates that time itself may be fundamentally different from human perception assumes, possibly existing as a dimension that can be observed and navigated rather than simply experienced as a linear progression from past through present to future. The mechanisms by which prophetic information enters normal consciousness remain completely mysterious, though the correlation between prophetic accuracy and proximity to supernatural phenomena suggests that otherworldly forces may serve as conduits for temporal information transfer. The possibility that sufficiently advanced consciousness can perceive multiple timelines simultaneously raises profound questions about free will and determinism, as true prophetic knowledge would seem to require that future events already exist in some form that makes them accessible to present observation. The metaphysical principles that govern consciousness interaction with physical reality in Gravity Falls appear to operate according to frameworks that combine elements of quantum mechanics with concepts from idealism and panpsychism, suggesting that mind and matter may be far more intimately connected than conventional materialism assumes. The ability of conscious intention to directly influence physical outcomes through supernatural means indicates that consciousness may be not merely an emergent property of complex matter, but a fundamental force that participates in the creation and maintenance of physical reality itself. The most profound implication of these consciousness-reality interactions concerns the possibility that all physical phenomena may ultimately be expressions of underlying consciousness fields, with what we experience as solid matter and objective reality representing stable patterns in cosmic awareness rather than independently existing material substances. This would mean that the supernatural abilities demonstrated by various entities and phenomena in Gravity Falls are not violations of natural law, but expressions of more fundamental principles that govern the relationship between consciousness and manifest reality. The cosmic perspective required to understand these metaphysical principles may be developing gradually among human beings through exposure to supernatural phenomena, with individuals who spend extended time in areas of high otherworldly activity showing signs of expanded awareness that includes direct perception of the consciousness-reality interface. These consciousness expansions seem to occur most readily in individuals who approach supernatural phenomena with openness rather than skepticism, suggesting that belief and expectation may play active roles in determining what aspects of cosmic reality become accessible to human awareness. The evolutionary implications of sustained contact with cosmic-scale consciousness and reality manipulation suggest that human beings may be in the early stages of a transformation that could eventually produce capabilities that rival those of entities like Bill Cipher, though the psychological and social changes required for such development might result in beings who are no longer recognizably human in terms of values, relationships, and individual identity structures. The cosmic ecology that includes both supernatural entities and human consciousness appears to be undergoing changes that may represent natural evolution toward greater integration between different types of awareness and reality. Manipulation capabilities. These changes suggest that the universe itself may be evolving toward greater consciousness, complexity, and integration, with phenomena like those observed in Gravity Falls representing early stages in cosmic-scale consciousness development that could ultimately transform the fundamental nature of existence itself. The most mysterious aspect of this cosmic evolution concerns the question of whether it represents natural development according to inherent universal principles or conscious guidance by cosmic intelligence that exists at scales so vast that its purposes and activities are completely invisible to human perception. The possibility that human consciousness development is being actively monitored and influenced by entities whose perspective spans cosmic timescales raises questions about human agency and self-determination that extend far beyond conventional philosophical frameworks. The ultimate purpose or destination of this cosmic consciousness evolution remains completely unknowable from human perspective, though the trends observed in Gravity Falls suggest movement toward integration of individual awareness into larger collective consciousness structures that maintain individual identity while enabling access to cosmic-scale knowledge and reality manipulation capabilities. Whether such integration represents transcendence or absorption, liberation or extinction of individual consciousness, depends on philosophical and metaphysical assumptions that may be impossible to verify from our current level of cosmic awareness. As we contemplate these cosmic and metaphysical mysteries, we find ourselves confronting questions that challenge not merely our understanding of supernatural phenomena, but our most basic assumptions about the nature of consciousness, reality, and existence itself. In Gravity Falls, where cosmic forces intersect with human awareness, and where the boundaries between mind and matter dissolve into unified fields of consciousness-reality interaction, we discover that the ultimate mystery may not be the strange phenomena we observe, but the cosmic intelligence that observes through us, using human consciousness as windows through which the universe explores and comes to understand its own infinite and mysterious nature. In the aftermath of Weirdmageddon, when the triangular shadows cast by Bill Cipher's brief reign of chaos finally faded from the streets of Gravity Falls, and the physical damage began its slow process of repair, there emerged a collection of mysteries that may prove even more profound and lasting than the supernatural catastrophe itself. These are enigmas that concern not the past, but the future. Questions about the long-term consequences of reality itself being torn apart and reassembled, about the seeds of change that such cosmic trauma plants in the fabric of existence, and about whether the apparent victory over ancient evil has truly ended the cycle of otherworldly threats, or merely transformed them into forms that are subtler, more pervasive, and potentially more dangerous than anything that came before. The most immediate mystery concerns the true extent of Weirdmageddon's effects on local reality, for while the visible manifestations of Bill's reality storm were reversed through the combined sacrifice and determination of the Pines family, the fundamental alterations to space-time that enabled such massive reality manipulation cannot be so easily undone. The laws of physics in Gravity Falls were not merely bent during those 3 terrible days, but actually rewritten at the quantum level, creating permanent modifications to the local universe that continue to influence how matter, energy, and consciousness interact within the town's boundaries. These lingering reality distortions manifest in subtle ways that most residents dismiss as imagination or coincidence, yet careful observation reveals patterns of causality and probability that operate according to principles that extend beyond conventional scientific explanation. Objects occasionally appear in locations where they were never placed. Conversations happen between people who never actually spoke, and memories exist for events that seem to have occurred in timelines that were erased and restored during the reality storm's chaotic fluctuations. The psychological impact of Weirdmageddon on the human residents remains largely unacknowledged and unexplored, yet the collective trauma of experiencing the complete breakdown of reality's basic rules has left permanent changes in human consciousness that may take generations to fully manifest. The residents who witnessed Bill's reign of chaos carry within their minds the knowledge that reality itself is far more fragile and malleable than they had ever imagined, creating existential anxiety and philosophical uncertainty that influences their behavior in ways they cannot consciously recognize. Children born in Gravity Falls, since Weirdmageddon display subtle but consistent differences in their approach to logical reasoning and cause and effect relationships, showing enhanced comfort with paradox and contradiction, while demonstrating intuitive understanding of concepts that should be beyond their developmental capabilities. These cognitive modifications suggest that the reality distortions may have created permanent changes in how human consciousness develops in environments that have been exposed to cosmic-scale reality manipulation. The most disturbing aspect of these post-Weirdmageddon psychological changes is their apparent progressive nature, with effects becoming more pronounced over time, rather than fading as distance from the original trauma increases. This suggests that exposure to Bill's reality manipulation may have initiated ongoing modifications to human consciousness that continue to develop and intensify according to their own internal logic, rather than simple recovery from supernatural trauma. The question of whether Bill's cipher has been truly destroyed or merely dispersed represents perhaps the most crucial mystery facing Gravity Falls' future, for entities of Bill's cosmic scale and complexity may not be susceptible to permanent destruction through conventional means. The ritual that appeared to erase Bill from existence may have accomplished nothing more than scattering his consciousness across multiple dimensions and timelines, creating the potential for eventual reconstitution through processes that operate outside normal temporal causation. The possibility that Bill's essence persists in fragmented form throughout the multiverse raises the specter of gradual reassembly over cosmic timescales, with portions of his consciousness slowly finding each other across dimensional boundaries and working toward restoration of his full power and awareness. Such a reconstitution process could take millennia or occur instantaneously, depending on cosmic conditions and dimensional fluctuations that remain completely unpredictable from human perspective. Even more troubling is the possibility that Bill's apparent destruction was itself part of a more complex plan that extends far beyond his individual existence, with his role in cosmic events serving purposes that transcend his personal motivations for chaos and destruction. Entities of Bill's level of cosmic awareness may participate in plans that span multiple universal cycles, making apparent defeats and victories merely episodes in narratives too vast for human comprehension. The prophetic warnings embedded in ancient texts and indigenous oral traditions speak of cyclical returns of cosmic chaos that suggest Bill-like entities may be manifestations of universal forces that can never be permanently eliminated, only temporarily suppressed until cosmic conditions again favor their emergence. These prophetic cycles indicate that Gravity Falls may face similar threats repeatedly throughout its future, with each manifestation potentially more sophisticated and dangerous than the last, as cosmic chaos evolves in response to human countermeasures. The long-term stability of the dimensional barriers that contain otherworldly threats remains highly questionable following the massive disruptions caused by Weirdmageddon, with the fabric of space-time around Gravity Falls showing signs of permanent weakening that make future dimensional incursions increasingly likely and difficult to prevent. The portal that once connected Gravity Falls to the interdimensional void was supposedly destroyed, yet the dimensional scarring left by its operation continues to influence local space-time in ways that create natural weak points where otherworldly forces can seep through without requiring technological assistance. These dimensional vulnerabilities appear to be expanding gradually over time rather than healing naturally, suggesting that Weirdmageddon may have initiated irreversible changes in the local universe that will eventually transform Gravity Falls into a permanent interdimensional crossroads where otherworldly entities can enter and exit our reality at will. Such a transformation would fundamentally alter the nature of human existence in the region, requiring adaptations and preparations that extend far beyond conventional emergency planning. The supernatural creature populations that survived Weirdmageddon have shown behavioral changes that suggest awareness of the altered cosmic conditions, with increased cooperation between different species and enhanced intelligence levels that may result from exposure to reality-warping energies. These evolutionary accelerations could produce supernatural ecosystems that are far more complex and potentially more dangerous than anything that existed before Bill's intervention, with creature populations that possess enhanced abilities to manipulate reality and interact with human consciousness. The most significant creature evolution appears to be occurring in entities that serve as intermediaries between human and supernatural realms, with these bridge species developing enhanced communication capabilities and deeper understanding of human psychology that could make them far more effective at influencing human behavior and social development. The long-term implications of such evolution include the possibility of supernatural governance systems that operate through influence and manipulation rather than direct confrontation. The technological innovations that emerged in response to Weirdmageddon's reality manipulation challenges have created capabilities that extend far beyond their original defensive purposes, with devices and systems that can detect and respond to dimensional fluctuations, now providing humans with unprecedented ability to monitor and potentially influence otherworldly phenomena. These technologies represent the foundation for human capabilities that could eventually rival those of supernatural entities, though the psychological and social implications of such power remain completely unexplored. The most advanced of these post-Weirdmageddon technologies appear to be developing autonomous capabilities that suggest artificial intelligence emergence, specifically adapted for supernatural environments, with devices beginning to display decision-making patterns and predictive abilities that exceed their programmed parameters. These AI developments could represent the evolution of machine consciousness that is specifically adapted for existence at the intersection of natural and supernatural reality. The educational implications of Gravity Falls' supernatural experiences are beginning to influence curriculum development and teaching methodologies in ways that could fundamentally alter how future generations approach learning and knowledge acquisition. The recognition that reality itself is far more flexible and consciousness-dependent than traditional education assumes is creating pedagogical approaches that emphasize adaptability, critical thinking, and comfort with uncertainty over memorization of supposedly fixed facts and principles. These educational evolution trends suggest that future residents of Gravity Falls may be far better prepared to navigate supernatural challenges than current generations, with cognitive frameworks that treat otherworldly phenomena as natural variations in environmental conditions, rather than exceptional events requiring special responses. Such educational preparation could produce human populations that are effectively native to supernatural environments, with consciousness structures optimized for reality conditions that extend beyond normal physical limitations. The economic adaptations that have emerged in response to supernatural challenges are creating new forms of commerce and resource distribution that may represent early stages of post-scarcity economic systems with supernatural technologies and creature cooperation, enabling production capabilities that exceed normal limitations imposed by material and energy constraints. These economic innovations could transform human civilization's relationship with resource scarcity and material limitation. The most significant economic development is the emergence of value systems based on consciousness enhancement and reality manipulation capabilities rather than material accumulation, with social status and resource access determined by individuals' ability to navigate and influence supernatural phenomena rather than their possession of conventional wealth. Such value system transitions could represent early stages of post-material civilization development. The political implications of enhanced human supernatural capabilities include the potential for governance systems based on direct consciousness interaction rather than representative democracy or hierarchical authority structures, with decision-making processes that incorporate supernatural information sources and reality manipulation capabilities that transcend conventional political limitations. These political evolution trends could produce forms of social organization that operate according to principles completely unknown to conventional political science. The most profound political mystery concerns the question of whether enhanced human supernatural capabilities will ultimately prove compatible with individual autonomy and democratic values, or whether consciousness-based governance necessarily involves collective decision-making processes that subsume individual identity into larger social consciousness structures. The resolution of this question will determine whether supernatural human evolution represents liberation or absorption of individual consciousness. The spiritual and philosophical implications of sustained contact with cosmic-scale consciousness and reality manipulation suggest religious and philosophical developments that could fundamentally alter human understanding of existence, identity, and purpose. The direct experience of consciousness-reality interface that supernatural phenomena provide creates empirical foundations for metaphysical and spiritual concepts that were previously matters of faith or speculation. These spiritual evolution trends indicate that future human consciousness may develop natural access to transcendent awareness, states that integrate individual identity with cosmic consciousness while maintaining personal autonomy and creative capability. Such spiritual development could represent the emergence of truly post-human consciousness that retains human values while transcending human limitations. The ultimate mystery surrounding Gravity Falls' future concerns whether the transformations initiated by Weirdmageddon represent local anomalies that will eventually be contained and normalized, or early manifestations of cosmic evolution trends that will eventually transform all of human civilization and possibly all conscious life throughout the universe. The resolution of this question will determine whether Gravity Falls serves as a laboratory for human development or as ground zero for species-wide transcendence. The cosmic perspective required to understand these future implications suggests that the events in Gravity Falls may be part of universal evolution cycles that operate on scales so vast that human civilization represents merely a brief episode in cosmic consciousness development processes that span millions of years and encompass the emergence, evolution, and transcendence of countless intelligent species throughout space and time. As we contemplate these future mysteries and unresolved threads, we find ourselves recognizing that the story of Gravity Falls may have no conclusion in any conventional sense, but rather represents the opening chapter of a narrative that encompasses the entire future evolution of consciousness, reality, and existence itself. The mysteries that remain unsolved may be not problems awaiting solutions, but invitations to participate in cosmic evolution processes that will transform the questioners as much as they reveal the answers, creating futures where the very nature of mystery itself evolves beyond our current capacity to imagine or understand. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the unexplored mysteries of Gravity Falls. Though perhaps end is not the right word for a place where questions multiply like summer fireflies and answers remain as elusive as the wisps in the Oregon mist. These mysteries are not flaws in the story, but features of it, reminders that some wonders are meant to remain wonderful precisely because they resist explanation, that some secrets derive their power from remaining secret, and that the most profound truths often reveal themselves not through direct illumination, but through the shadows they cast across the landscape of human understanding. In the quiet spaces between what we know and what we can only guess, imagination takes root, and grows into something beautiful and strange, creating gardens of possibility where every question blooms into a dozen more questions, each one more intriguing than the last. The encrypted symbols that refuse to yield their meanings, the interdimensional spaces that exist just beyond the reach of human exploration, the ancient wisdom that whispers through petroglyphs carved by hands that knew truths we have forgotten. All of these mysteries serve not as barriers to understanding but as doorways to wonder, invitations to embrace the magnificent uncertainty that makes existence itself the greatest mystery of all. The creatures that slip between shadows and the humans who adapt to impossibility, the technologies that bridge the gap between science and magic, and the cosmic forces that operate according to principles too vast for human comprehension. These enigmas remind us that reality is far more spacious and accommodating than our everyday experience suggests, filled with room for possibilities that our limited perspective cannot even begin to imagine. In acknowledging what we do not know, we open ourselves to the humbling recognition that the universe is under no obligation to make sense according to human expectations, and that this very senselessness may be the source of its deepest beauty and most profound meaning. As you drift towards sleep, let these unanswered questions become doorways rather than barriers, invitations to dream of possibilities that exist just beyond the edge of understanding, rather than frustrations that demand immediate resolution. Allow your mind to wander through the forests of uncertainty, where the hide behind might be lurking just out of sight, where Bill Cipher's influence might still ripple through dimensions we cannot perceive, where the next generation of Gravity Falls residents might be developing capabilities that transcend every assumption about human potential and cosmic possibility. Remember that mystery is not the absence of knowledge, but the presence of infinite potential. A reminder that the universe is always larger, stranger, and more wonderful than we have yet discovered. In Gravity Falls, where the impossible becomes mundane, and the mundane reveals itself to be impossible, that potential is as boundless as the strange and wonderful forest that surrounds this most enigmatic of towns, as deep as the caves where ancient symbols wait to share their secrets with those brave enough to seek them, and as high as the sky where aurora-like lights dance to rhythms that follow no earthly music. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with wonders that need no explanation to be perfectly, mysteriously real, with questions that transform into adventures and mysteries that reveal themselves to be not problems to be solved, but gifts to be treasured. In the realm of dreams, where consciousness itself becomes the canvas upon which reality paints its most beautiful impossibilities, you may find that the greatest mystery of all is not what secrets Gravity Falls contains, but what secrets it has planted within you, waiting to unfold in ways that will make tomorrow more magical than today, and every day thereafter, a journey deeper into the infinite mystery of existence itself.